You're listening to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast for and by Rockies fans on Rocky Mountain Rooftop. Thank you for joining us as we discuss all things baseball and Colorado Rockies. Hello and welcome to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast on Rocky Mountain Rooftop, proud affiliate of the Fans First Sports Network. I'm your host, Evan Lang, and with me, as always, is Skyler Timmons. Skyler, how you doing today?
Good. Video viewers can see I'm wearing my quarter zip-up sweater with a button-up shirt underneath because I was under the assumption I was going to get the call as the GM, and I did not get it.
Well, there's always next time. And you know what? There's still time that you get a different position for the Rockies front office, so don't give up hope.
Oh, hey, yeah, the GM position may still be open.
But not the PBO position, apparently.
Professional bull riders?
Yes, correct. Is that PBO?
That's PBR.
No, I thought that was a cheap domestic beer.
It's all intertwined.
Well, before we get started today, just wanted to mention a little bit of a recent development in Rockies land that is worth bringing up. We talk about Rockies prospects a lot on this show. We've talked a little bit about Arizona Fall League. This week, it was revealed that Colorado Rockies prospect Braylen Wimmer, who is out in Arizona for the Fall League right now, suffered a seizure on the way to a Fall League game and was diagnosed with a brain tumor that requires surgical intervention. His friends and family have put up a GoFundMe to help pay for his surgical bills. He will need brain surgery and other treatment. We will be linking the GoFundMe link in the description of this podcast, and we also already have it up on our social media pages. So if you are able to contribute at all, that link is there for you. Of course, don't feel pressured to give above your means or anything like that. But if you have the available scratch and feel like making a difference for Braylen Wimmer's treatment, the link will be there for you.
Yeah, it's just an unfortunate thing. You never want to see anybody deal with that kind of garbage. And hopefully things everything will work out fine for him. But yeah, just a little something to help him and alleviate some stress from him and his family during a sucky time. It's awful when you get that kind of stuff dealing with the brain, especially tough stuff. So he's got a long road ahead of him, and thoughts go out to him and his family, and hopefully everybody can kind of rally behind him and help him out a little bit.
Yeah, Braylen, I doubt you're listening, but if you are, we're pulling for you. Keep fighting the good fight.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll do, as always, I suppose, our quick Colorado Rockies, Colorado sports breakdown. And I guess we can start with the Denver Broncos playing one of the worst games I've ever seen against the Las Vegas Raiders this week on Thursday Night Football that ended in a 10-7 victory. The Broncos offense and special teams really, really bad. Yet somehow we're 8-2.
Win's a win.
Yeah, take
win
those
any
W's.
Which way. But yeah, there's a lot of things that got to get cleaned up. Just inconsistent. They didn't do anything at the trade deadline that we see. So this is the crew they're rolling with the rest of the year. And I don't know. We'll see. They really have to make some adaptions though, because they're lucking into a lot of wins.
Yeah.
Like, thank goodness you have a great defense, but that offense is not firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised they didn't make any moves at the trade deadline. The Broncos may be 8-2, but they are technically still in year 2 of rebuilding mode. Yeah. And they are punching pretty well above their weight class, same as they did last year. And you'll definitely take an 8-2 record. But the big thing that I need to see is better development from Bo Nix at quarterback, where he has just not looked good this year. He's got happy feet all the time. He's not setting his feet and stepping up in the pocket. He's not been accurate with his throws. And, you can't rely on a fourth quarter comeback every game and barely beating your opponents to make a deep push.
Hey, it kind of worked for Tim Tebow almost.
This is not the first time that I've been told that this Broncos team reminds them of the Tim Tebow Broncos. And Bo Nix is supposed to be a little bit better of a quarterback than Tim Tebow. But it's also, I think there's lots of other issues. I don't think Bo and the offense and Sean Payton are all on the same page when it comes to offensive play calling. We've seen a lot of things that are just being repeated that aren't working, a failure to commit to the run game, um, lots of end arounds and slants and screens that just aren't working. But then the problem is when Bo tries to heave the ball downfield, he's not setting his feet, and so he's not accurate, and he's overthrowing his receivers. And so, yeah, just a lot that needs to get cleaned up on that.
Yeah. If only the Broncos, had access to some, Hall of Fame quarterbacks who they should really employ to come in and, really spend a lot more time with Bo and help him out.
Both of whom are known for having a large specific facial feature.
Mm-hmm.
John Elway got them big teeth. Peyton Manning has that big forehead.
I believe it's called a 5-head.
It's big regardless. But yeah, Broncos are 8-2. Nuggets coming off of two very solid victories against the Golden State Warriors and the injured to heck and back Indiana Pacers. Not a ton
Undefeated
really
at home.
undefeated at home. Not really a ton to talk about for the Nuggets because they're just sort of rolling along.
Yeah, they're the Nuggets. They're good. Jokic is doing good.
Jokic looks like
Wins.
Nikola Jokic. A lot of the guys that they brought in to help him supplement the bench are making an impact, especially Jonas Valanciunas having an actual backup center has been great. Really, the only person who's not really found their footing yet is Cam Johnson.
And
And
he's just fitting into a new system where, he had to carry his weight out in Brooklyn, and that's what, Michael Porter Jr. is doing. But now over with the Nuggets, hey, we don't have to rely fully on him. And they're probably still just figuring out how he fits in, how they can utilize him better.
yeah, pretty much. So nothing really huge there. And then for our Colorado Avalanche, at time of recording, just last night, they put the absolute beat down in a shocking win against the Edmonton Oilers. I didn't think they couldn't win this game, but I don't think anyone expected it to be a 9-1 beat down on the Oilers' home ice.
Yeah, I wasn't able to watch the game, but I was getting notifications of goals on my phone, and I just kept getting notifications. I checked the score, and it's Cale Makar's hit a second one. Oh, Drac Jury's hit another one. Here's Nathan McKinnon with one, and the notification just kept coming.
Yeah, for the first time as the Colorado Avalanche, they had 4 or more players with 2 or more goals. They knocked out starting goalie Skinner after putting up 4 goals on him, only for old friend Calvin Pickard to come in and give up 5 goals. And the Avs, they continue to be terrible on the power play. They were 0 for 7 on the power play last night, but this team is monstrous at even strength.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff.
And that is your Colorado Sports Report. And cutting it short a little early here because we actually have a lot of news when it comes to the Colorado Rockies. And Skyler, it was a very strange week when we stopped recording last week.
Yeah, since last we spoke, it was trying to sift through the news that Emil Sade and Matt Foreman were no longer in the running, but then actually no, the search for a GM hasn't stalled out, and we're just getting a lot of conflicting things uh, on that Sunday that were recorded, and then more stuff continued to hit the fan on Monday, and just set off a weird week of speculating about what the heck is going on with the Rockies, only for news to drop later in the week to figure out where they're at now as a team.
Yeah, it was very odd. Like you said, on Sunday we had the back and forth where it was multiple sources all conflicting of Sade and Foreman are out and they're starting from scratch. They're not starting from scratch. We're still doing fine. And then on Monday, it was reported once again from The Athletic. It was The Athletic that really had all the scoops for the most part for this GM search. The Athletic reported again that Sade and Foreman were indeed out of the running. That was later confirmed by multiple sources, including Patrick Saunders and other sources. Though, of course, the Rockies continued to say nothing. So it led to lots and lots of speculation on why they were out of the running. And throughout the week, we got additional reporting. You had Troy Renck of the Denver Post saying that they had balked at the lack of control they would have over personnel moves. You had news come out that Sade turned down an offer from the Rockies and Foreman withdrew his candidacy entirely. You had other speculation about it being about money, it being about, Dick Monfort not wanting to have to pay front office executives during the expected lockout next year. Just a lot of different things causing a lot of headaches and confusion.
Yeah, and a lot of no trusted sources, but it seemed to boil down really to the two main things that I'm sure we'll dive into here, where it seemed like Dick Monfort had a much more involved role than maybe we all initially believed from the start of the searching, and that it was really a looming lockout, a presumed lockout for 2027, that he was reluctant to change the front office and pour more money into it than he needed to because things might change after 2027. And it brings the question of autonomy for whoever runs the front office. How much will they actually be able to do? Or is it, okay, you're just going to come in and you have to work with what we have and we don't want to change too much? So it brought a lot of questions and things that we've always had about this team and how they operate and who's running the ship.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that came to this was a lot of frustration over the Rockies' continued secrecy of they've said nothing since Bill Schmidt and Zach Rosenthal stepped down. And that was the main source of confusion, is that we got no actual updates from the Rockies. The Rockies never even
Yeah.
confirmed that they were interviewing anyone. It was
Yeah.
all sources and leaks and vague league reports and everything like that. And I think that frustration really hit a breaking point on Monday when it was reported that both Sade and Foreman were out of the running, of like, the Rockies need to open up and at least give us a little bit of information about what's going on, because this is really frustrating and confusing.
Yeah. Because we know that they're a dysfunctional team and this just adds to the dysfunction because we had talked about where it sounded like Walker had been saying all these right things. Hey, we're going to go outside. We're going to get these new fresh set of eyes. We're going to look for an external candidate. Great. Like he's saying all the right things. We need to figure out how to maximize our resources and all these buzzwords that do sound good. And it felt like they were on the right track. But then it feels like, oh no, all of a sudden we're at the finish line. Who screwed this up to fumble it? Now, who is Chad Powers here and dropping it right before they going in at the goal line? It's a pop culture reference for the kids at home. But who fumbled it? Whose fault is this? And this team truly is it's doomed because it's not a good look when you have two finalists and you can't land either of them because one declines an offer and one just withdraws because of it. Like it's not a
Yeah,
good look.
and it led to some very grumpy reporting from us over at Purple Row. A lot of additional speculation. It really seemed like owner Dick Monfort had sort of reinserted himself into more of a vital role when it came to interviewing candidates and figuring things out, which of course led to a lot more concerns, because Dick Monfort and his meddling is the reason we're in this situation to begin with.
Yeah. And then, no, we're getting additional reporting of, he talked to Adam Ottavino. Hey, they talked again recently about the job and whatnot and brought up all this speculation. Well, is Ottavino the guy that they're going to hire? Because that's a very Rockies move and everything. So it's just so much confusion. And maybe it was here's my little conspiracy theory, Evan. Maybe the Rockies let all that info out to distract everybody's. Well, they were thinking the Rockies were going to zig this way. Instead, they could zag this way with their hire that they do make that we'll talk about in the next segment. But
It's entirely possible, but yeah, it got weird, and that was when, like, after all the weird reporting on Monday, when it came out, or it got reported that former Rockies reliever Adam Ottavino, who spent 7 years with the club and had 7 very successful years with the Rockies, had conversations with Dick Monfort specifically about the open head of baseball operations role. And that was reported by the Boston Globe and other credible sources. And we were like, what? Because Otto has expressed interest before, and he's looked like he's reached the end of his career. He only made about 1 or 2 appearances in 2025 with the New York Yankees, and he has expressed interest previously in being in baseball operations or being in coaching and managing for baseball, player development, stuff like that. So him wanting to be involved with the Rockies front office isn't that weird, but him being potentially a candidate to lead baseball operations was very, very strange. And to have
Yeah.
it then it got reported the next day, oh, the talks were pretty informal. It was just them talking about the role. But then it got reported again later the week, oh, they've talked again. And it
Yeah.
was just like, that would be a very, very Rockies move to drop the ball on these 2 promising candidates from outside the organization and take a crazy hard turn and go for a guy who has just left the field, just hung up his cleats, and put him in charge of baseball operations.
Yeah. No, because we're like, oh, Otto in the front office in any capacity. Yeah, that's great. I'd love to have him involved. No, he would be super helpful. He's a really smart guy, a good pitcher, no, really into analytics and everything. He would be a phenomenal resource to bring in to just work with the organization over pitching and all that stuff. Perfect. That would be a great hire.
Yeah,
To
would
head the
love to
whole
have him.
thing, no, that would be stupid. The guy with no experience, because Otto, you love his enthusiasm and his gung ho attitude of, oh, I don't want to climb the ladder. I want to go straight to the top and do the main thing. I don't want to work my way up. Like, oh, I enjoy your gumption, kid, but you probably should work up the ladder in that
Yeah.
capacity.
And that's what I was saying is for Otto an entry level front office job, like some sort of assistant role or pitching strategy role, pitching coaching, player development role. Awesome. That sounds great. Like legitimately, we've seen Scott Oberg do interesting things in that kind of role. And it's another guy who has had success pitching for the Colorado Rockies for an extended period of time. And like you said, he's a guy who is interested in analytics, who's interested in pitch development, pitch adjustment, making changes. Really would be an interesting hire.
Hmm.
But you take that guy with no front office experience and you say, congratulations, you're in charge. And that's a little bit of a concern. And they didn't do that. And as far as we're aware, it was never actually particularly close to being that. But that's
Yeah.
just another problem with how secretive the Rockies wore everything. And, shout out to the Rockies. They did not let anything leak unless it was something that they wanted it to. They kept quiet. We had literally nothing the entire time. And that's both a good thing and now a bad thing because it led to all this confusion and frustration. And at the end of it, we were all going, enough is enough. One of y'all needs to come out and start telling us what's going on because it sounds to us like you're really Rockiesing up this front office search.
Yeah. When this off season and going into 2026 is about rebuilding not just your organization, but your image and relationship with the fans and across the league. And with the deadlines that are coming up of the GM meetings start tomorrow, Monday. They start in Las Vegas for the next couple days. No, that deadline was coming up and important roster decisions coming up over these next couple weeks. The clock was starting to tick. And when we had last talked, like, oh, okay, maybe it's not these two yet, but there could be somebody else that they're ready to hire sometime early this week. But then when it kept sounding like, nope, these two are out and they're starting from scratch. They're having to reopen the search. It made us all worried, and it's not having clarity or a picture from the organization. It just muddied everything up, and they don't have the benefit of, no, they know what they're doing. We can trust them. It was, what are these morons doing?
Yeah.
How did Dick Monfort this up to
It's,
make a phrase like, you have, knowing our trust in the owner, it was easy to say, yeah, he probably meddled too much, and he probably did. Like he did something. There was something that scared off these promising candidates that they had gone for maybe their first, second choice, did something, and so it was just all on brand for the Rockies.
Yeah.
Peter Brand, if you will.
And then on Thursday, we get something entirely out of the figurative and literal left field. And we'll talk about how the search took its next turn after a quick break. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Affected by Altitude with Evan and Skyler. We're talking about the Rockies' interesting, to say the least, front office search for their new head of baseball operations. And the next big development was on Thursday, out of nowhere, lots of reporting from a bunch of different sources, not just Rocky sources, national sources, coming out and saying the Rockies are close, if not finalizing, a deal with a new head of baseball operations. And the name that we were given was longtime baseball and football executive Paul DePodesta.
The new PDP to infringe on the Purple Dinosaur podcast.
We'll see if lawyers are going to get involved with that.
Well,
But
remember, because we have to get those lawyers for Mick Donfort.
yeah, somebody put out a meme calling him Mick Donfort, and we got to sue over that. We own that intellectual property. Thank you very much.
Oh, I don't think we said TM though the first time we said it. So
It's implied.
go ahead and check the tape.
I don't even remember what episode that was that we first brought out McDonforts.
That's a long while ago.
Yeah, it's when you're going for 187 episodes and change, it makes it a little hard to remember what happened when.
Hard to keep track of your lore.
But yeah, head on down to McDonforts today.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Paul DePodesta, and this was a weird one because of all the candidates that have been mentioned, all the potential candidates they have been mentioned, both by name and implied, Scott Sharp, Matt Foreman, James Click, Thad Levine was never confirmed to be interviewed, but his name got brought up a lot. DePodesta was not one of them.
And then it was like Bob Nightingale, like the night of, or like the day after when it was officially announced, had talked about, the night before his name was coming out and none of us believed it.
Yeah, like we weren't sure if we should take that seriously or not, which is very
Not a good sign.
Rockies. Like, let's be clear, it's all very, very Colorado Rockies. But then other sources kept coming out. You had Mary Kay Cabot of the Cleveland sports media scene come out and appear to confirm this. And then on Friday morning, Paul DePodesta was officially confirmed by the organization as the Colorado Rockies, not head of baseball operations, not general manager. They have given him the title of president of baseball operations, the first PBO that the Rockies have really ever had, but technically the first PBO since the death of the late Kelly McGregor back in 2010.
Yeah, the first like official title usage of that. And yeah, they said they were going to go for an external hire, Evan, and we all thought, just outside the organization. Apparently they met outside of the league entirely to bring him DePodesta, who, he's had his baseball roots, but has spent the last decade with the Cleveland Browns in a chief strategy officer role type thing. That's where he's been for the last 10 years with the Cleveland Browns. And the Browns, I'm sure, are a roaring success over the past 10 years. But it's a very out of left field hire that wasn't on anybody's radar. But apparently he was on the Rockies' radar the entire time.
Yeah. The Montfort consortium stated that he was actually the first person that they interviewed throughout this whole process, which is very interesting because what does that say for the fact that you apparently, of course not confirmed by the organization, but you apparently made an offer to Emil Sade who rejected it, and you had another promising candidate withdraw his candidacy. But it's a very Rockies hire, and he is not without his he's got his merits. He's done some interesting things. He has spent a very long time in and around sports operations, mostly in baseball until the last 10 years or so. He got his start in the late 90s working for the then Cleveland Indians in a variety of roles. He is most known for being Billy Beane's right-hand man and assistant general manager for the Moneyball Oakland Athletics of the early 2000s. He has worked in the front offices for the San Diego Padres and New York Mets. He had a 2-year stint as the general manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers in 2004 and 2005. It wasn't until 2016 when he jumped over to football, where he accepted that chief strategy role for the Cleveland Browns. And, it is important to say that the results over in Cleveland have been mixed. But the biggest thing that you have to wonder with all of these positions is how much of the struggles of those organizations are ownership related. The
Mhm.
Browns have long been a very dysfunctional organization, but they have been especially dysfunctional under the ownership of Jimmy and Dee Haslam. Infamously, it was a rumored story that when the Browns drafted Johnny Manziel, it was Jimmy Haslam overriding his, executives, overriding his front office to make that pick. And he's done so with other picks as well. He's known as being very, very meddlesome in terms of how the organization is ran. And you can say that about a lot of the organizations that DePodesta has worked with. The Moneyball A's were known for having, this is before John Fisher was officially the owner, but known for having very cheap ownership at the time, because it was after Wally Haas had died and they had new ownership and they did not want to pay money. And you had the same issue with the Los Angeles Dodgers when he was GM, as that was under the dysfunctional ownership of the McCourts. And then you had the weird ownership situations for the Padres. You had the Wilpons of the New York Mets. So you put it all together, and it's just a lot of experience working with organizations that are dysfunctional, that have, either owners that are either very meddlesome or very cheap or both, and a focus on, for all of them, honestly, but especially the A's and the Padres and the Mets and especially the Browns, of drafting and player development.
Mhm. Yeah, and that seems like the role that the Rockies really want him to take on because his big thing uh, was is analytics, and a very smart individual and really embraced analytics and how to help construct rosters and and development process, all this stuff and drafting, developing. That's what the Rockies are hoping, that maybe he can beef out the analytics and really bring the Rockies into a more modern era of all that information and whatnot. Nobody's it, the hiring itself in total just is a mixed, I think, mixed reception for a lot of people. There's some think this is a brilliant hire by the Rockies and this is excellent and going to help them. Others like this is the dumbest thing. Like he's so far behind already, and this isn't going to help the team, get to where they need to because they're already starting from behind. And now even further with the guy heading the operation.
Yeah.
So it's a really mixed bag of what does he bring to the table and how is he going to help the Rockies?
Yeah, especially because, when it was the Moneyball A's, that was the early 2000s. And so, yeah, at the time, DePodesta was an analytical darling. He loved sabermetrics and advanced analytics and research and scouting, but that was 20 plus years ago.
Yeah.
And you follow that up with the fact that he's been out of baseball now for a decade. Everybody uses advanced analytics and sabermetrics now. So you've got to wonder how behind the curve he is.
Yeah.
And at the same time, a lot of the teams that he has been with still didn't necessarily have a lot of success. The Moneyball A's are a very well known story, but it didn't bring them a World Series championship or anything like
Yeah.
that. When he was GM in Los Angeles, he was fired after 2 seasons, though, of course, there is a lot of mixed stories on why. One of the more common ones, though, is that he butted heads with owner Frank McCourt, and that the local media, which had, it was at the time where people weren't really open to adopting analytics and sabermetrics yet, really did not care for him. And that's despite the fact that he had a winning record overall in those 2 seasons. But his second season, the Dodgers had just one of 2 losing seasons since 1999. And
Mm-hmm.
then you go with the Padres. When he's with the Padres were actually pretty good. Remember the Padres were in the running for making the playoffs in 2007, and it came down to that game 163 against the Rockies. The Mets started to sort of pull themselves up, in that late era of when he was there. And then really, I think where he's getting the most scrutiny is because he has spent the last decade with the Cleveland Browns. And the Cleveland Browns have been just continuously a mess, where right after he came in in 2016. The 2016 and 2017 seasons with the Browns are the years where they went a combined 1-31, including the 2017 season where the Browns went 0-16. But then you did start to witness the Browns doing some kind of smart stuff. They started stockpiling draft picks. They started doing a rebuild. They started building the team back up. And eventually, in 2020, the Browns had their first playoff win since before the original Cleveland Browns relocated to Baltimore. And that was under first round draft pick quarterback Baker Mayfield. But then the next season, you had Baker playing with injury the entire season. The Browns underperformed. And that led to the whole Deshaun Watson debacle, where, his proclivities off the field are well known at this point. But then the Browns traded a haul of draft picks for him to get him from the Houston Texans, and then gave him the largest salary in NFL history, the largest guaranteed salary in NFL history, and the first fully guaranteed contract in NFL history. And that looks really, really bad. But then you also have to think how much of that is DePodesta and the rest of the front office, and how much of that is the owner, is Jimmy Haslam. And I think that's something that DePodesta is going to have to navigate with the Rockies, though to less of a severe degree, is having to navigate meddlesome ownership that is going to try and override you.
Yeah, it's now we the beauty of this podcast, Evan, is that we have time to sit and think about things from our initial reactions that the folks in the Purple Row Slack get to hear immediately. And
I did not take it well when it came out on Thursday.
and I think that's okay for I think we're both in that same boat. We're both hesitant. It's not our favorite move, but it's the move that's been made. So we have to hope for the best with it. And that's the thing, is you just hope, because I'm worried. I did. You just don't know it's the unknown of what is this guy going to do with this team, and how is he going to view a player like Ezekiel Tovar? Is he going to come in and immediately try to trade Ezekiel Tovar? I don't want that. I want to keep Tovar. I want to keep Chase Dollander. I want to keep some of our top prospects. I don't want them to get traded away for other things right now. And so there's a lot of that unknown, and that's scary. But I'm just going to be hesitant where the Rockies' intentions are good, where this is a guy that, maybe he wasn't their first choice, because the right person for a job is always the first person you hire or first person you interview. He just didn't happen to be down the hallway. So there's still things you're going to be worried about of how is he going to run the team? How is he going to change things? Is he just going to completely upend everything? Which, yeah, it probably does need it. But how much does it go back to Dick Monfort? And, was this the right hire, or was it just kind of a desperation? So that's going to hang over him. I think Evan, going into this, is he doesn't feel like the first choice. After all the stuff that came out of these guys are finalists, they're both out. And now it's this guy's our head of operations now. We're grateful to have him here. It feels like a third choice.
Yeah.
We got the bronze medal of our choices. And no, that's not necessarily the best thing.
Yeah, but a lot of that, like you said, he could have very well been their first choice. But a lot of the reason why people are feeling conflicted on this is because of how secretive and how little information we got from the Rockies over this entire cycle, where the Rockies ended up being the last organization without a PBO or GM. Everyone
Yeah.
else had made their hires. Everyone else's manager hires are done, and the Rockies haven't yet set up their manager yet. But at the same time, we have to at least point out the Rockies did technically do what they were asked, which is hire someone from outside the organization with no prior ties to the Rockies, but does have front office experience. They're not brand new, and is open to and appreciative of advanced analytics and data.
Yeah.
And
And that's
that is DePodesta. That is true.
yeah. Yeah, and then it's sounding like, from a lot of people now have said it that he's likely going to hire a GM underneath him and other front office staff. So he probably came in and said, "Yeah, I'll work with whatever you've got, but I still need to be able to hire people." And I'm sure Dick Monfors like, "Okay, that's good enough for me."
Yeah.
Instead of no, some of these other guys felt like maybe they wanted to come in and overhaul with all their own people, which is understandable that they would want to do that. But Dick Monfort being loyal to the people that are there, like, no, I don't want to do that right now. Come in and work with what we have, and you can make a couple hires
Yeah.
type thing. They weren't going to have as much control, which, no, they could balk at that. That's perfectly fine for them. Like, I'd be upset too. I can understand where Dick Monfort's coming from outside of the fact that he wants to curb all spending for all teams with the salary cap and everything, but with that lockout. But at least in this aspect, that can maybe be okay. DePodesta is going to work behind the scenes. He's going to focus just on the operations part of it. It's going to help beef up how they do things and whatnot. And then hopefully he can bring in a good GM who can then make the moves necessary to help build up the roster and make good moves and run the actual like roster aspect of running the team while he does the behind the scenes big picture stuff.
Yeah. And the fact that it has been now widely reported that DePodesta is going to bring in his own GM and other front office staff is, I think, a pretty important point, because I do think there is probably some truth to the speculation that other candidates, Sade and Foreman and others potentially wanted to come in and clean house. I've reported on it. We've talked about it many times. The Rockies front office is full of a lot of guys that are Dick Monfort's guys, his pals that have been here forever. Guys like Danny Montgomery, who was there in 1991 when the expansion was granted. And yeah, I'm willing to bet that Dick Monfort didn't want to let someone come in and fire all of his friends and people that he's loyal to. But if you have a guy who says, okay, I can work with that, but you've got to let me hire my own staff and still run things my own way, if you can come to a working arrangement like that, it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, you would hope that okay, maybe there's a little bit of compromise from Dick Monfort's side of things, but it's you know you see the jokes where yeah, this would have been a good hire 15 years ago, 10 years ago. He's working from behind. Rockies are already behind, so they're still bringing in a guy who's behind, and he's going to have to do a lot of quick catching up. But Christian Saez at DNVR, friend of the show, had mentioned too, like, hey, the Cleveland Browns have been like the top team in analytics during his time there. They took over from the Baltimore Ravens, were just like the expanse of their analytical department. And like from hearing from the Rockies, who are typically last with a handful of people also doing laundry, like that's beefing up that department. Hey, that'd be great. But then it brings in we can say all this about DePodesta. Oh, he'll do this and that. Maybe he'll do this. It all goes back to okay, how much control is Dick Monfort and resources are going to get allocated for him to use for this stuff, and that is probably the biggest question out of all of this is how much control will he truly have given to him by Dick Monfort.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it also boils down to who he brings in to be part of his front office.
Yeah.
Who's he going to bring in to be his general manager? It could be Thad Levine, who they've been friends since they were kids. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we have no idea. And we're not going to have any idea for a while. And he's got a lot of work ahead of him to start.
No.
Because he was hired so late, he's essentially going right in to the GM meetings, which start today, if you're listening to this right now on day of release on Monday, November 10th,
Yeah.
and on those 2 days, like he's got to get through those meetings before he can even be formally introduced to the press at a press conference
Yeah.
later this week. I think they're doing it on Thursday at Coors Field. And it's possible that he's got guys in mind or things in mind, but the Rockies have been working from behind the eight ball on this for basically this entire cycle so far. And he's got
Yeah.
a lot of catching up to do. And as we've seen from how secretive the Rockies have been, we're probably not going to know a whole lot.
Yeah, and that's something too because there was about nobody really knew what DePodesta was doing over with the Browns either. He was very secretive, like he didn't even live there in in Cleveland. How he would commute there while living in La Jolla, California, and would commute to Cleveland, and so he's very secretive and quiet and things. So yeah, very on brand hire for the Rockies. That's that's going to make things tough, I think, too, for fans to no, accept it because we're gonna have to see the results when they happen instead of, you know, hearing about it or kinda getting a clear vision. That press conference that he has, he's got a lot of heavy lifting to do to try and instill some hope and, bring people like me onto his side of, "Okay, you get my vote of confidence." Like, it's a very crucial press conference because the Rockies don't have many press conferences.
Yeah, they really, really don't. And there's just still so much to go. I think what's going to be really important, not only in addition to this press conference, is going to be if/when he brings in a GM to be, because that's what it was with Cleveland too, and with other organizations, is that he was rarely the public face.
Yeah.
His GM is going to need to be able to be a public face, much more so
Yeah.
than he is, much more so than other GMs in Rockies history have been. We really haven't had a GM that is very publicly facing since Dan O'Dowd, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
and
the GM's going to need to be able to instill confidence and do press conferences and tell people what's going on and do everything that is necessary, and that's going to be a really tough job. But then there's also a lot of other crucial decisions that need to be made that don't even have to do with the roster at this point. And we'll talk
Mhm.
about the roster decisions, coming up here, but there's still no word on if Warren Schaefer is going to be the manager still, or if he's not, who's going to be the manager, who's going to be
Yeah.
where doing what.
Yeah, there's thing like with Warren Schaefer of, oh, if he's not given the manager job, they still kind of want to retain him in the coaching staff somehow or as the bench coach or something. So like, in some capacity they want to keep Warren Schaefer, but how much of that is Dick Monfort as opposed to whatever plans these new heads want to do. And so there's just so many questions now where okay, they've checked one box, but now there's a billion other things on the checklist to do. they they finished the quest, Evan. Their main objective, hire head of operations. But then it's opened up the map like Assassin's Creed. It's just littered with icons of places they need to go and do.
Yeah, and according to a friend of the show, Patrick Lyons, the Rockies have not yet reached out to Warren Schaefer since hiring DePodesta.
Hmm. Interesting.
And that
I think we've also established that Dick Monfort doesn't know how phones work. Like I don't think he knows how to call people.
he knows how to email people from his iPad, though.
Yeah. Has Warren
So,
Schaefer tried emailing Dick Monfort? Do I still have a job?
Schaefer, I know it's awkward, but give that a try. Let us know if it works.
Except for my iPad.
But
Yeah.
yeah, that's sort of where we're at right now. That's caught us up to present day in terms of the front office, and now all we can really do is sit and wait. It's going to be an interesting week. I think there's going to be a lot of news this week. Maybe I'm wrong, but I was talking with Renee Deckard of Purple Row, and we both were kind of agreeing. It's like I feel like now that this move is done, there's going to be a lot of things coming out really, really fast.
Open up the floodgate.
Exactly.
Hopefully.
But there's
We'll
also the
see.
entire opposite possibility of we hear nothing until spring training.
Yeah. We're gonna it's gonna be like that first day of school. All these guys are gonna roll up like, oh dang, we're all on the same team.
Oh,
Albert Pujols,
hey,
you're our manager.
we have lockers next to each other. That's cool.
Also, real quick, Evan, before we finish the segment, technically, I would say that this format the Rockies have isn't their first time with a president of baseball ops, and with a GM underneath him. Because remember when they had Dan O'Dowd and Bill Guyvette being co-GMs, where Dan O'Dowd was kind of the big picture stuff, and then Guyvette was the day-to-day operations of the roster and
And
everything.
they tried to put his office down in the clubhouse. Oh, that was such a weird period of Rockies
I
history.
I believe that Dick Monfort saw that episode of The Office when Michael and Jim become co-managers, and Michael's supposed to focus on the big picture stuff, and Jim is supposed to do day-to-day. And it just did not work in that aspect. But I think hopefully this organization can work better when you actually have a guy with the title of operations,
Yeah.
of president of baseball ops, with a GM underneath him.
And the last thing I'll say, because the segment is running very long at this point, is we discussed last week, we discussed the week before, that maybe the Rockies should focus on hiring a president of baseball operations and then a GM underneath him if they're willing to do that. And it is at least a sign, it's a step in the right direction that appears to be the case. I am not, like you, Skyler, I am not fully sold on this move.
Yeah.
After having days to think about it, I feel better about it because
Yeah, slightly better.
I did not take the news well on Thursday. If you look at my social media posts, but I have had the time to at least weigh the pros and cons and think about it and be a little bit more open. But the Rockies don't get the benefit of the doubt from me anymore on this kind of thing, because the last time we gave them the benefit of the doubt was when they hired Bill Schmidt.
Yeah.
And it has
Big dollar
been
Bill Schmidt.
all downhill from there. So it's up to the Rockies, and I wrote about this extensively. It's their job to rebuild their reputation, to give us a reason to believe in them and believe that they're not going to screw this up, versus it being our job to just have blind faith in the organization, because they have not earned that.
Yeah.
But
pretty much.
We'll wait and see, and we'll see what happens. We got to take one more quick break, so don't go anywhere. We will be right back. Welcome back to Affected by Altitude. I'm Evan. That's Skyler. This is our third and final segment. And Skyler, during the whole front office search, it was a little weird because the Rockies were making front office decisions when it came to the roster. Like, and some of these we had discussed before were ones like, all right, these are no-brainers. So we have the declination of options for Kyle Farmer, Orlando Arcia, and Tyro Estrada. The Rockies declined the mutual option for all three of those players, and that was expected. And we had all said, both of us, they're going to do that anyway.
Yeah.
All three of those
Estrada's
players
going to become a free agent.
All three of those players elected free agency. It was actually really interesting because Estrada's option was a little different in that he had a mutual option but was still arbitration eligible. So we declined his option, but he was still on the 40-man roster and had to go through arbitration. But the Rockies then outrighted him. They put him through waivers. He went unclaimed, and he did not accept an outright assignment to AAA Albuquerque and elected to become a free agent. Which was a little bit of a surprise that they actually did that. Because, not accepting the options and letting them become free agents for Arcia, for Farmer, absolute no-brainers. Like, yes, both of them were big, important clubhouse presences, but they were not particularly contributors on the field, and they don't really have a place in the organization right now.
Yeah. And it makes sense. Like, for me, Estrada wasn't surprising. I think that he was going to get non-tendered anyway, because they declined a $7 million option, but he's still probably going to make about $4 million in arbitration. And they want to look at a different direction. He didn't really do much this year because of injuries, and on the field when he was healthy,
Yeah,
So
he
that one's a pretty easy
fine.
one. Yeah, but nothing you want to hit your wagon to for another season. So not overly surprising, but yeah, it's all these moves that anybody could make, and figured, okay. And I could also understand, there's some instability with the Rockies right now, and there's players, especially those veteran players. You don't want to play in this unstable environment right now of not knowing what's going to happen with a new front office and coaching staff and shuffling the roster, and you didn't play that well in the year anyway. So, like you were saying, these are all by the book moves that were being made with guys that were on the roster already.
We also had Lucas Gilbreth and Aaron Schunk decline outright assignments. I do believe we discussed that last week, but yes, still on the list and become free agents. Herman Marquez is officially a free agent, and then we got the big smattering of the minor league moves. Nothing really surprising, honestly. Like, none of these are particularly surprising moves in terms of all the minor league free agents, the guys who have been here for long enough that now they can elect free agency. There's still a chance that some of them come back, but Owen Miller, Sean Bouchard, Carl Kaufman, Connor Van Scoyoc, they're all free agents now, and we wish them the best. And then the one weird move was, so part of one of the deadlines was that you have to get people off of the 60-day injured list and onto the 40-man roster. And so they activated Tyro and then outrighted him. They activated Chris Bryant, and we've discussed Chris Bryant at length, but man, that guy needs to work something out where he is not taking up space on the 40-man roster. But the weird one was that right before that, they outrighted Dugan Darnell off the roster. Dugan, one of the few very nice stories of 2025, where he finally made his big league debut. He did it in a crazy situation. He actually pitched pretty well in the short amount of time we had him, but his season was sadly ended very prematurely due to a pretty serious hip injury that is going to keep him out for at least the first few weeks of the regular season, perhaps the first few months. A torn hip labrum plus structural damage to the socket. It's a tough gig. But he was he was waived and claimed on waivers by the Pittsburgh Pirates, who then designated him for assignment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we had touched on that. Well, it's not the second part of him getting DFA'd again. But yeah, these first few weeks, I think it was the waiver thing that was kind of the big thing with teams, that roster crunch, figuring out what to do with guys. The Rockies with that top priority in the waiver claims, it was a key to have maybe somebody in charge to make waiver claims and find an opportunity to snag a couple guys on the cheap that you can put on your roster. They didn't do a whole lot with it, but they did get a couple guys.
Yeah,
which
and I think that was the confusion of all the other ones. All the other guys were like, yeah, these were kind of no-brainers. Even, unfortunately, Dugan, whom we both, like a whole lot, was, you can't really have him on the 40-man roster taking up a spot when you are pretty sure that he's not going to be able to play to start the season. You don't know how he's going to recover from that hip injury, and we talked about this last week. And so you've got to make that space, and it's a very tough decision, but it is a decision that makes sense. But what had us confused is that the Rockies made waiver claims, like they picked up people, and our question was, who's making these decisions?
And why these people specifically?
Yeah, and the first one that they picked up is they claimed Troy Johnston, a first baseman and outfielder, off of waivers from the Miami Marlins. Johnston, who is an older rookie, made his MLB debut last year, did actually pretty well in a limited amount of MLB playing time, but is much more known for being a very strong minor league hitter, especially when it comes to driving in runs. But it was one of those ones where, that's weird. Why?
And part of it, too, is it feels like a signal towards a certain former top prospect for the Rockies kind of losing out his position at first base this offseason. But yeah, a guy that, if he sticks with them throughout the offseason, is a guy that can get an audition there to try to fill in the first base mix if they can't find somebody, in free agency or whatnot to gather in. But ultimately, what I cracked up is that if you squint really hard, this is just left-handed hitting Blaine Crim, uh, because the numbers are pretty similar, the pedigree, of what they've done in the minors, and then you know the brief appearance at the big league level.
They're both
That
on the
they
older
both have.
side.
They're both 28 years old and whatnot. So it's basically they just brought in a left-handed Blaine Crim. Hey, do a platoon with the two of them. There you go.
Yeah. And I mean, this team does need more lefty hitters.
Yeah. So there you go. Left-handed hitting, going to the platoon.
Yeah. But just very, very strange feeling, because
Yeah.
then right after that, the Rockies claimed a right-handed reliever from the Tampa Bay Rays in terms of Garrett Acton, who very similarly, a little bit older, better known for his work in the minors, has very limited big league experience. He made one appearance for the Rays in 2025, and it was a scoreless inning. Awesome, good for him. Where I believe he walked two and struck out none. But hey, you know, the big thing with Acton is that he basically missed all of 2024 recovering from Tommy John surgery. Before that, he had made a very, very brief big league appearance with the Oakland Athletics. But in general, it's mostly the minor league workload that you're looking at. And it's just a very interesting move. Pitchers, especially, like, the Rockies have a lot of pitchers to work with right now in their organization, but them going outside and grabbing one on the cheap who is just another guy who has potential, but is a little bit on the older side, and we don't know how it's going to work out, is just a very interesting move when you allegedly do not have anyone running your front office at this point.
Yeah, but also see the one guy on social media like
Yeah.
showed that he had emailed Dick Monfort.
Hey, have you guys considered picking up Garrett Acton? We could get him for the cheap, and he was pretty good in the minors.
Yeah, but it's just one of those typical moves of, okay, we're gonna stock up the minor leagues just a little bit. We posted on our socials over on Twitter and also on Blue Sky, just those smattering of minor league free agents. These two fill up some of those needs. They're on the 40 man. I don't know how long they'll stay there. With the Rule 5 draft coming up in December, I don't know where you get your deadlines to fix your 40 man roster. There'll probably be some moves, and these guys could stick with the organization down in the minors. But it's just kind of building up depth. Rockies need left-handed relievers. They've lost Luke Gilbreth. They lost several other guys. So now you add another one. Who knows what they do with Ryan Rollison? Is he going to be on this team for very long still? So hedging their bets to get more lefties and fill up that first base depth. I wouldn't put too much stock into them if you're someone following these roster moves. They just sort of feel like depth contingency plans for now. And who knows, like DePodesta or whatever new GM he comes in, we don't have to worry about these guys, and we may never see him in a Rockies uniform.
Yeah, I mean, look at the Pirates, who picked up and then immediately designated for assignment Dugan Darnell. Like, we're in the period of time right now where things are going to be flipping back and forth a lot in terms of what may or may not happen. And the big thing to know right now is that the Rockies payroll is going to be pretty low when it comes to 2026. Chris Bryant is obviously going to be the highest paid guy. He's due $27 million. Next highest guy up is Kyle Freeland at 12.9, and then Senzi at 10. And outside of that, you don't really have. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. That's the luxury tax mark. Freeland is going to be due 16 next year, and Senzi 12. And then below those three, the next highest is Ezekiel Tovar, who's only getting paid a little over $5 million.
Yeah, his is on that escalating scale as the years go on during his extension. So you have technically you would assume money to move around, but again, Dick Monfort's always crying poverty and we don't have the resources and revenue like those other teams do. We need a salary cap, which that'll be a conversation for another time. I'm sure we can devote a lot of an episode to that. But you would assume there should be some money to move around and be creative, but who knows?
Yeah.
But
And we have no idea what kind of moves are going to be made. MLB trade rumors and other websites put out there, oh, here's our list of players who could be traded. And there are, of course, going to be some Rockies on there. You see names like Kyle Freeland. You see, names like Jimmy Herget and other guys on this team, even Hunter Goodman. And honestly, we have no clue. Now, I don't think they
yeah,
trade Hunter Goodman. I think that, especially after he won the Silver Slugger over Will Smith, which congratulations to Hunter Goodman, by the way, the first Silver Slugger catcher in Rockies history. Again, beating out Will Smith, the Dodgers catcher, for the award. That's pretty cool. That's a nice bit of news to drop for us.
mm-hmm.
But we have no clue what this roster is going to look like, especially with the ARB total. Some of them are really reasonable. Some of them, you've got Mickey Moniak, who is estimated to potentially make $4.2 million in arbitration, and that's a little high.
Yeah, could be worse.
Oh, absolutely. It's just we
Yeah,
are in the unknown zone.
yeah, because it's how is now that you have somebody in place to head the baseball operations, assume he hires a GM relatively soon, to like they're going to value different things and assess things differently. So, no, they could choose to non-tender everybody that's eligible for arbitration. They could trade some of these guys. We just don't know because we're in the early stages of the relationship. We're just starting to date Paul DePodesta. We've heard some things about him, heard that he was a movie star, but now we're just getting to know him. What's his favorite color? The small talk, Evan. We're in the small talking stage.
How soon? One of my favorite bits was I'm trying to remember who set it up, Blue Sky, but it was how soon can he start incorporating purple into his wardrobe? Because almost all of the photos of him from his tenure with the Cleveland Browns, he's wearing brown, orange, and white. The Cleveland Browns team colors.
Synergy.
It's like in Power Rangers where you can only wear the colors that are your Ranger color.
It's true. How else am I going to tell them apart?
It's not about remembering their names or what their faces look like. You're wearing green. You must be the green one. But hey, he'll fit in well with Dick Monfort, who is pretty famous for wearing a lot of purple.
Mm-hmm. But Evan, what would you say is the most pressing roster move that this new front office can make or has to make?
I mean, outside of figuring out a long-term solution for Chris Bryant, that's a really tough one, honestly, because outside of Bryant, and it's really only Freeland and Senzatela who are making any sort of significant money right now. And both of those contracts are up, what, next year?
After 2026.
Yeah.
There's options for both of them. Senzatella is a club option that will get denied. And then Freeland's is a vesting option if he reaches 170 innings pitched, I believe. They're vests, and then otherwise it is a club option, I think.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And so, honestly, I think the biggest roster moves are all going to be pretty small ones. I don't think we should expect the Rockies to make any sort of big splashes in terms of any available free agents, especially with a lockout pending in 2027. I think a lot of it is going to be, are they willing to trade prospects that they don't think are part of the future? And I think, honestly, a big part of that is, what don't they do? Who do they keep? Who do they think is part of the future? You mentioned Ezekiel Tovar earlier before. I feel like maybe Dick Monfort would try and push back against that, but do they go, I'm not sure about Tovar and how he fits for the future as we try and build that kind of thing.
Yeah. And yeah, that'll be a whole conversation we can have for another episode of thoughts on that kind of mentality and how to approach the roster. Because, hey, we're going to have a long off season to talk about stuff, Evan. And we have to figure out something. But yeah. I think first and foremost is figuring out what the heck to do with Chris Bryant.
Yeah, that's the biggest one. And I think I wrote about this last week on Purple Row for my Monday Rock Pile. And, we've talked extensively about Chris Bryant, but he keeps saying, oh, I want to keep playing. But the evidence in front of everyone, including him, is that that's simply not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so a big part of that is getting all of the representatives in a room together. And if they can work out some sort of deal, maybe deferred payments or something like that, because Chris Bryant is guaranteed his money regardless. He gets his remaining $81 million no matter what happens. No matter if there's a lockout or not, it's coming to him eventually. So honestly, the best thing that the Rockies can do is try and get him to agree to something that's going to make the pain a little bit easier, give them more money to work with, and some sort of deferred salary, some sort of deferral agreement. That's my thought.
Yeah, pretty
but
much.
At the same time, you could also go with the idea of, well, we're not going to be competitive for the next 3 years anyway, so just rip the Band-Aid off, get all the money paid out, and then we're back to square one. Like the Broncos did with Russell Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough. It's tough. I honestly don't know what the exact solution is. And so I don't envy Paul DePodesta for being the one who has to figure that out.
Well, that's why he's going to hire some poor sap to make those decisions for him.
Chris Bryant, the new GM.
There you go.
That was a very frequent joke on social media. Is, oh, the new GM's going to be Chris Bryant. Haha, we're already paying him. I don't know. It's going to be a weird rest of the offseason. There's a lot of stuff coming up over the next few weeks, and we will try and keep you informed of everything that may happen here on Affected by Altitude. But Skyler, how about you tell the folks where they can find you?
Find me over on Twitter at Skyler Timmins, SkylerTimmins. Haven't spelt it for a while for people. And then over on Blue Sky, stimmins13, .bsky.social. Then writing Wednesday Rock Piles for purplerow.com. Also, Ranking the Rockies is still going for Purple Row, so check us out over there.
It will continue We're in the 20s for quite some time.
Only one more month.
Oh, we're getting there, but man, the Rockies used a lot of players.
Yeah, roughly 4 or 5 more weeks. Then we're done.
So close.
And then it's time for State of the Position, not long after that.
Yeah, State of the Position goes by quicker, at least.
Yeah.
But you can find me. Of us. You can find me on social media, Blue Sky mostly, evanlang27.bsky.social. Would love to hear from you. Also find me over on purplerow.com, writing your Monday Rock Piles and the weekly Pebble Report. Arizona Fall League is almost at the end here. I believe they have just about a week to go. So interesting to see how that's going. Charlie Condon and Cade Denton, both named to the Arizona Fall League All-Star team, also known as the Fall Stars. So that is awesome. Congratulations to both of them. Remember that you can find Rocky Mountain Rooftop on all of your favorite podcasting platforms, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts. If it has podcasts, we're probably on it. You can also find Rocky Mountain Rooftop on all of your favorite social media platforms at Rocky Mountain Rooftop. That's at ROCKYMTN Rooftop. That includes YouTube, where you can find the video version of the show.
And again, check out our description for that GoFundMe for Braylen Wimmer, and check it out.
Yeah, we appreciate it. And, once again, thoughts out to Braylen during this time, and wishing him a full and speedy recovery. But that is going to do it here for us on another episode of Affected by Altitude. We thank you so much for listening. We will catch you next time. And Skyler, how about you hit him with it?
Farewell. This has been Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast with Rocky Mountain Rooftop, a proud affiliate of the Fans First Sports Network. Catch new episodes every Monday on wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Be sure to follow us on YouTube as well for video versions of the show.